Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm chatting with Keith Neumeyer from First Majestic. In today's interview, we get into First Majestic's Q1 results, which are our first glimpse at what the company looks like post Gatos transaction. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Keith, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Steve, how you doing? Great seeing you again.
So, you guys recently announced your first quarter results. What's the high level here? What can you tell us?
Well, I've got my cheat sheet in front of me, as it was produced by my office for me for this interview. But look, it was a record quarter, all on every single financial metrics that we measure our success against. Previous quarters. It was just a record all around. It's pretty amazing. Gatos was put into our portfolio on June 16th. So we actually lost a couple of weeks of production. So, under Q2, in theory, with a full quarter, Q2 should even look better. But we ended the quarter with over 450 million US dollars in our bank account, which is, as a CEO of a company, that's a nice number to look at. And, financially, we're in the strongest position we've ever been in the history, in the 22 year history of the company, which is something I'm extremely proud about. And, over those 22 years, every year was not easy. And 2024 wasn't easy either. We started off 2024 a bit of a difficult note, and ended in 2024 on an extreme positive note, where we had a very, very strong Q4. But now Q1 has blown Q4 out of the water. And, we had record silver production, 88% increase year over year in silver production. Our revenues increased by 130%. Our revenues for the quarter were over 240 million US dollars, in one quarter. So we're, if metal prices stay the way they are today, we could potentially hit $1 billion in revenue this year. And that's a lot. So, mine operating earnings, I don't know if you really want me to go through all the numbers, but, the news release is out. I would suggest people go have a look at it for themselves.
And we're going to have commentary over on our channel for anybody who wants that full breakdown. Production in Q1 hit 7.7 million silver equivalent ounces. So I think the question everybody's wondering now is this level of production going to be the new baseline result for First Majestic in a post-Gatos world?
Well, we are dealing with Mother Nature, right? And it's hard to predict, right? I'm expecting Q2 will be better than that number. But look, the mines come in and out. I've seen mines, grade drops off, for a period of a year or two. And then all of a sudden you get into a new high grade area, and all of a sudden production goes back up again. Or, you run into a metallurgical problem, or you run into a water issue, or, something happens, right? Mining is a tough business. You never know exactly what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. We try our best to put guidance out to the public, that, is based on what we know. And then when we try to be realistic in what we tell the public through our news releases, and, we're not always dead on right. It's nice to be up, this is above our guidance, and to beat our guidance is a pretty good place to be. We hope to continue that trend, throughout 2025.
How's the integration with Gatos Silver going so far?
Fantastic. On a funny note, the biggest issue is the logo change. You had a lot of very dedicated people there that had been there right from the beginning, and then for them to lose their logo and put up the First Majestic Eagle, for what was a bit challenging for some of the people on site. I've got the logo right here on my chest, right? So this is now showing up on all the rolling vehicles and all the buildings, and so on and so forth. And that was really the only issue. From an operational perspective, as I said, the mine's running over budget. The talent there on site is extremely good. There's really good staffing, good community, nothing to complain about. We've actually made virtually zero changes.
So it's fair to say that Cerro Los Gatos operations is meeting expectations.
Absolutely. 100, actually exceeding expectations.
San Dimas has been performing better as of late. Can you maybe give us some color on how everything's going over at San Dimas?
Yeah, and I said earlier, we started, in 2024 on a bit of a difficult note, and part of it was San Dimas related. There were some labor issues there. We've been trying to push some change on site, and we got some pushback, from the local union there, and so we're in a little bit of a battle, two parties, feet in the sand type of situation. And it took a while to resolve, and it was resolved by the end of 2024, which gave us a very, very strong Q4. We still think further improvements can be made there at the site, but it's running very well. It's currently running over budget as well, which is nice to see.
So you guys had record quarterly cash flow in Q4 and then another good cash flow quarter in Q1. I think shareholders are going to want to know. You mentioned all the cash that's on the balance sheet now. What's going to be the plans to deploy that cash?
I want to hoard it, quite honestly. Running mining companies is not an easy business. So, it's nice not to have to raise money. It's nice to, not have to worry about the financial side of the business. To see the treasury growing the way it's growing right now, gives me a ton of comfort. It should give our shareholders a ton of comfort as well. Um, you know, M&A is tough, right? And there's not really a lot of good companies out there that I would like to buy at this point. So, look, we're going to take a step back. We're going to watch the treasure grow. We're going to make sure Los Gatos is fully integrated. We're going to continually work on improving San Dimas. Santa Elena's been a star and then continues to be. We still have a couple of challenges at Encantada that we're trying to resolve. But overall, it's going to be a pretty darn good year, 2025, and I just want to get through this year and see what it really looks like, and then maybe make some decisions in 2026.
Now, if I'm a silver investor, my ears just perked up because you said that there's not that many companies out there that you want to buy or projects that you want to buy.
Yeah.
And when we think about the silver industry and the supply demand dynamics, uh, it sounds like we're not going to suddenly just see this huge glut of supply hit the market over the next 10 years.
I don't know where it's going to come from. You've got Pan American, who owns the asset down in Guatemala, and who knows if it'll ever come back into production. They were producing 20 million ounces a year, but when it was shut down. But 20 million ounces, even if it came back tomorrow, the entire mining sector produces 830 million ounces. So how does 20 million ounces affect the market? Probably not very much. Um, Pan American's got another asset called Navidad in Argentina. Doesn't look like that's ever going to get permitted. Who knows? They may say something different. Other than that, there's, another, I think Bear Creek, I think it is, has got an asset in Peru, but it's decades away. It's interesting. I looked at I was listening to a CEO of another mining company on stage at a mining conference a few months ago, and they did analysis, and they came up with a number of 18 years. So from drill bit to first production, on average, it takes 18 years. So that's pretty shocking. If you have a market like silver, 830 million ounces being produced annually, and consumption is 1.2 billion or even a 1.3 billion thereabouts. That's a serious supply demand problem. What is it going to take to fix that? Even if we had triple digit silver tomorrow, which I'm the first guy to ever coin that phrase. I'm the triple digit silver guy. I know there's others that have now come along and suggested similar types of numbers, but I came up with that phrase about 10 years ago. I do think we're going to get there. But even if we did get there, what's the mining sector going to do? How is the mining sector going to react? You've still got permitting, you've still got all the construction, you've still got discovery, of course, as well. But at 18 years, how long is it going to take to fill that gap?
Yeah, it's interesting too, just because we talk with various mining companies here in Canada, and the frustrations that they have with just trying to move stuff forward. And it was a big part of the debates here during the election is how mining projects can move forward more in, in more of a streamlined fashion to move them along. And it it seems to be a problem that isn't it's not just local to Canada. It's
No.
as you just said, it's everywhere.
It's worldwide, and I'm the chairman of a company called First Mining Gold, which I put together back in 2015, and we've been trying to permit this gold mine in northern Ontario since we bought it back in 2015. And since 2015, we spent over $100 million on permitting. Um, and it looks like it's may get done. Like it looks like we're maybe a year or two away from, final permits, but it's been a long slog and tough, very expensive. You got to do a lot of studies. The government has many demands on you to environmental studies, animal life studies, plant vegetation, studies and so on and so forth. And these take scientists, and they're expensive, and they take long times to put reports together that meet the government standards. And the mining company has to pay for it. The mining company has to continually raise the money. Frustrated shareholders continually, watch. These companies have to raise money and dilute the shares, and eventually you get your permit, and hopefully there's somebody there to cut a check to build your mill. So it's exciting business for sure, but it's frustrating at the same time.
I gotta sneak in a question here about the sentiment right now. Like you just mentioned that you were listening to another CEO talk. I know that you're always at conferences, you're chatting with other CEOs, investors. There's definitely a sentiment you could feel in the air when things are good, or when they're really bad. I remember being at Beaver Creek 2 years ago, and it was one of the most depressing environments I'd ever been in my life. Um, but now I notice from a lot of the mining people we're talking to that it is picking up. Obviously, gold trading at nearly $3,300, it touched 3,500 at one point. It's going to help that. We still haven't seen that much capital flow into those junior names, but I'm curious when in your world, sitting there, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar silver company, in the conversations that you're having, how is the sentiment right now?
It's not, it's definitely not overflowing. I'll be traveling to Germany here in the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see what the environment is like. It is getting better for sure. But the big mining companies are still using $1,600 gold for their valuations. And we're going through our H2 budgeting right now, and we're trying to figure out what metal price, we should use for our H2 budgeting. And the accountants, the geologists, the engineers, all the professional people that work in this sector, the metals have moved so fast, so far, so fast that no one's repricing their valuations. So if the major mining executives that run all these gold mines or gold companies, silver companies around the world don't believe in the metal price, why should the institutions believe in it? And they've seen this happen before. They've seen metal prices spike, and then they collapse. And I think there's an expectation that this is a short-lived phenomenon that is too risky to invest in. And that's led by the mining companies. You're not seeing the mining companies taking out these juniors. There's lots of juniors out there with 43-101 resources in the ground that could be economic mines sometime in the future, and everyone's got their hands on they're sitting on their hands doing nothing. Um, if that was to change, if the mining companies want to get or decide to get more aggressive, maybe the institutional investor will say, hey, these guys actually believe that this market's for real, and this is the early stages of a bull market. We're going to look at this sector, and we're going to start to invest alongside the major mining companies, and we're just simply not there yet.
And it's interesting because, I mean, you've been involved with one of the largest mining transactions in the last year, obviously.
Yeah.
But then just you saying that, it makes me think of Newmont, who's unloaded, I think $4 billion worth of properties in the last year. And you kind of expect the opposite out of Newmont in a market like this, and they're actually getting rid of properties.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very fascinating, and they did better than they thought they were gonna do on that sale. Congrats to them, the amount of cash they were able to, accumulate as a result of that transaction or those multiple transactions, but nevertheless, yeah, for them to be a seller, you look at stuff because we looked at those assets. We don't wanna become a gold company, that's why we didn't participate in that process, but, we could have easily participated if we wanted to. But, there were some decent mines that they were selling, and, it was shocking to me that they would sell so many of their, core assets.
So, last question for you, Keith. Over the next year, if I'm a shareholder in First Majestic, what should I be expecting? Is it just the plans just focus internally on the operations and demonstrate that you guys are going to keep keep what feels like a lot of momentum going, or could there be some eyes on some more acquisitions? What does the next year look like? Obviously, I'm not asking for any non-public material information, but if I am a shareholder, how should I evaluate management over the next year?
Well, knock wood that, metal prices stay around these current levels. If they do, our cash flows are gonna continue, and, I already said that, we have over $450 million in the bank today. What that looks like at the end of the year, obviously, is gonna be a much bigger number. We do have a couple of tax disputes within Mexico that we're hoping to resolve, in 2025. So I think I know some investors, we get emails from people asking us about those issues, and, we're getting close. I'm hoping to see some resolutions, on those issues, which I think will help the business out, a lot if we can get some of that stuff behind us. But, operationally, we're looking at costs. I think that, inflation is kind of, dulled down a little bit, which is great to see. Lower energy costs, which is also, nice to see, which is affecting, chemical costs. Of course, we're a big consumer of chemicals and so on. So tires as well. So all these things are leveling out, or even coming down in price in some cases. So we think there's some opportunities to continually drive down our costs. And as metal prices stay the same, or we potentially even improve, I think, we're going to end off with a pretty, bang up, year from a cash flow and a profitability perspective.
Well, Keith, thanks for hopping on here. It's always a pleasure to get to speak, and congratulations on a great quarter.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Steve, and, look forward to talking to you again.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Guys, also let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for watching, everyone.